we have our second keynote speaker this morning. This gentleman has been founding and co-founding businesses since the 1980s. He is credited with being involved in starting the UK's first internet cafe, Siberia, Europe's first consumer internet service provider, EasyNet, the first multilingual addressing system for the internet called Real Names, and a lot more. We know him as the starter of TechCrunch, probably one of the most important technology blogs out there today, and most recently, Just Me, or Just.me. Ladies and gentlemen, Keith Teare.
Thank you. And once again, thank you so much. I've had a wonderful time here in Jordan. I saw a beautiful sunset last night. What I want to talk about briefly this morning is what's happening to us human beings. I loved the point the previous speaker made about the growing irrelevance of borders. Because for those of us who travel, that's been becoming true for quite some time. And now the infrastructure of the world is really globalizing us and making us different people than our parents or our grandparents were, just due to the familiarity we have with each other that was hard to grasp in previous eras. Social, mobile, and global, the new human race, is really meant to depict the moment that we're living through. Because when we try to innovate, we innovate within a context. We don't innovate within a vacuum. And unless we understand the context, we'll make mistakes. We couldn't, if we were selling horses and carts when Ford was making motor cars, we wouldn't be doing great business. And if we were selling things that predated electricity, once there was electricity, it wouldn't make a lot of sense. So I want to talk specifically about three things: mobile, social, and global. But I'll start, and this can be briefer than it was due to the introduction, by just reminding us that the internet isn't one thing. There's actually been at least 4 internets in the period since the internet started in the middle of the 90s. The first was a portal-based internet. That's when I created the ISP EasyNet in the UK in 1994. And Siberia Cafe, which was for people who didn't have internet but wanted to come and find it before there were internet cafes. That first internet really was dying from the very beginning because people started to build functionality, not just websites, not just portals, but actual applications quite early. I remember things like See You, See Me in the internet cafes where you could do video and chat around the world from a terminal in 1995. So there was always the beginnings of an application-centric internet within the portal internet. And of course, the portal brought us Yahoo and Excite and InfoSeek and all those other companies that were in the States. But it pretty soon gave rise to Web 2.0. And Web 2.0 really was the evolution of the first version of the internet into an application-centric internet, where we got companies like Salesforce.com becoming a serious threat to previous companies like Oracle, because they were able to deploy applications through browsers to hundreds of millions of people who didn't need to install software to use those applications. And Web 2.0 is still with us today. It hasn't gone away. But within Web 2.0, we began to get the social internet. The social internet was where we were no longer anonymous. We had more than an email address. Now we had a public self, a Facebook page, a Twitter handle. We became identifiable individuals. The internet moved from being a page-based web to a message-based web. Blog posts, tweets, Facebook posts, numbered in the billions compared to the hundreds of millions of web pages. Suddenly content became more atomized, more granular, and there was more of it. And we became identifiable individuals with reputations, with personalities, and that's the social internet. Within the social internet, we're now seeing the next phase, which I think is very different and redefines the meaning of social, which is the mobile internet. Let's go into a little bit more detail about the shift from social to mobile. This is the growth of Facebook since Q3 2010. It's now reached over 1 billion daily, monthly active users and over 500 million daily active users. If you look at the breakdown, the USA and Canada is the smallest cluster of users. The biggest is called the rest of the world. Asia and Europe are the two in the middle. Obviously, this part of the world is part of the rest of the world in this particular graph. These are the same numbers for monthly actives. It's absolutely massive. It's huge. But then again, and these are the mobile elements of that, 600 million actives in Q3 2012 on mobile alone on Facebook. Massive. But it isn't massive. This is Facebook compared to mobile SMS messaging and over-the-top messaging. There are about 12 trillion messages a year that travel from cell phone to cell phone. There are only 360 billion Facebook messages on all platforms. Think about it. Why do you buy a cell phone? It's not just for you. It's to communicate with other people. It has an address book where all your people are. That address book has services built on top of it. Text services, iMessage, email, WhatsApp, Line, KakaoTalk. There's a growing number of them. And human beings use these phones to interact with each other. And by the way, they don't need to join a Facebook to do it. There's no club in the middle that we all become members of. The phone itself is entirely capable, because of its address book and the transports, the voice system, the email system, and the text system, to glue us all together into a huge grid of people around the world that communicate with each other. And we do it far more often than we use any social network. In other words, mobile is the most social technology the internet has ever seen. This on the right there is Facebook, a highly centralized network with nodes, that's us, hanging off of it, sending messages to the center, and those messages are then forwarded to the person you intend to get them, or people. The middle one is Facebook, Google+, Twitter. In other words, the internet's made up of lots of these things, and they all exist together, and you can even send messages between them sometimes. The third one, closest to me, is the mobile social network. There is no center. There's just all of us existing together in a distributed network. It's incredibly powerful, incredibly huge. It's uncontrollable. We all are in control of ourselves. We don't need to trust anyone with our information because they don't own it. We send it to our friends via the mobile network. It's a revolution, nothing less than a revolution. Yet most of our software is still built for the first two. The opportunity which we all have is to start thinking about software for the third one. This is just giving you a sense of size. The number of messages sent per year on SMS and email alone compared to all of the other internet services put together. And this is the number of people using email and SMS compared to the number of people that use the other services altogether. So when you think about it, at the very bottom we've got media sharing, photo sharing, apps like Instagram, Path, and others. In the middle there we've got Facebook, Google+, Twitter. And at the top we've got mobile messaging, taken together both the orthodox messaging like SMS and email and the over-the-top messaging like WhatsApp and apps of that ilk. The number of people doing each of those is tiny at the bottom, large in the middle, and huge at the top. Most software development today on mobile is focused in the bottom. Media sharing, most likely. Instagram was bought for $1 billion by Facebook. It's in the bottom. Small acquisition, not big. smartphone sales just overtook PC sales worldwide, which is astonishing. It's only a small number of years since there were smartphones. And it's going to get way bigger. These are the projections for smartphone sales compared to PC sales going out a few years. Already, mobile internet traffic is starting to make up a significant proportion of total worldwide internet traffic. And the scaling trajectory of mobile traffic is dramatically greater than was true for desktop and laptop-based traffic in an earlier era. Most of this traffic is being driven by apps, not by web use. It's by apps sitting on top of the internet, running on mobile devices. And the time people spend on those apps just became greater than the time that the human race spends web browsing. Web browsing is now number 2 to app use in terms of time consumed. And the disparity on mobile between apps and the mobile web is huge. A lot of people believe that with Android and HTML5, the web will make a comeback. I'm not one of those people. I think that the ecosystem of apps is so much simpler for human beings to use and packaged in such a way that it's easy to consume and spend money buying, where there is a fee involved. In-app purchases work very well. Subscriptions work very well. The app universe seems to be on the course to become the dominant meme of the next 5 to 10 years. All of this happens everywhere. This is a chart of the largest 3G markets in the world. There's a long list of countries on there, Saudi Arabia being one of them. These are the largest active iOS and Android markets, meaning the smartphone users. But the fastest growing ones are the emerging markets, one of those being Egypt. By far the fastest growing markets. China obviously stands alone. And in some of those markets, this is India, mobile traffic already has passed all other internet traffic in terms of the amount of traffic that it accounts for. Think of it from the point of view of a Jordanian college student who wants to build something and have people use it. There are now 155 Apple app stores in the world available to that developer through a single submission to Apple through its developer program. Google has 134 stores around the world that take paid apps. Almost every significant market in the world is addressable on this mobile platform through 2 entry points, Apple and Google. The old days when you had to go and do a deal with AT&T in America or Verizon, the carriers have gone. The carriers are making a lot of money from the data services that this all implies, but they're no longer a gateway. There is no gateway. You simply have to build a good app that people want to use. That means that you can get big real fast. There are, by the end of this year, 2 billion smartphone users on the planet. Over 1 billion already. Angry Birds' growth there is astonishing, but not so astonishing when you think about the market that it's entering into. It's only astonishing compared to the Web 2.0 era and how long it took to grow. And Instagram getting to 100 million users, in fact, it's much bigger now, in 2 short years and being acquired for $1 billion, seemed jaw-dropping when it happened, but in retrospect, looking in the rearview mirror, maybe it's normal. And if you put this into context, most of the world still is not on the internet. There's a lot of growth in our future. And the number of smartphones compared to the number of mobile devices is tiny. You can now get a smartphone in most markets for free if you have a 2-year contract. So there isn't great barriers to the belief that this number will change dramatically over the next few years. So the conclusions that I draw from this is that first, the desktop and laptop-based software that we've all learned to use and love doesn't represent the future. Neither will it die, just like radio isn't dead. It just won't be where the growth is. The world, it will be an app world, not a web world. That the growth trajectory will be faster and bigger than anything we've ever seen. That if you think globally, and I've heard a lot of people here talk about how difficult it is for Jordanians to be successful because the market's so small. Well, the market isn't Jordan. Jordan is just the place you live. The market is the world, and the distribution networks are there for you right now, without moving an inch from where you currently live, just by thinking about your audience as a global audience and not thinking about it as a local audience alone. So I don't really buy the idea that Jordan is in some way in a difficult situation because it only has 5 million people. That's not a problem. Estonia produced Skype, and Estonia is not the center of the world. It's about how you think, how you are taught to think about your potential. And if you think your potential is constrained by your immediate domestic market, that really is a 19th century point of view, not even a 20th century point of view, certainly not a mobile point of view. I eat my own dog food. This is just.me. This is what we call our public part of just.me. Just.me is a messaging app. It allows a user to use the address book on their phone to send rich media messages to anyone they want. Those messages, whether they contain video or images or audio, voice messages or text, are all stored in a cloud that when you're 10 years older than now, you can look back and remember what you did this week in the Dead Sea, like a timeline. But it's all under the control of the user on the phone. There are times when you don't want to share, but you want to remember. So Just.me also allows you to save those things privately, just for yourself. And there's sometimes when sharing isn't enough, when you just witness something you think the world should know about, like this conference. So Just.me also allows you to publish publicly, including to Facebook and Twitter, the output of your camera, your microphone, your keyboard on the phone. Just.me is going to be released, we think, March 21st. It's up to Apple on iOS, and then about 2 months later on Android, in 14 languages. It will be launched first in Japan. And this is a Silicon Valley company. It will be launched first in Japan, about 2 hours later in China and Korea, then in Indonesia. Then it will be launched in the Arab world, in Hebrew, in Russian, Greek, and Turkish. Then it will be launched in German, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and French. And then finally, because that's the way the sun rises, in English. And we're doing that on purpose to make the point that the world has no center anymore. And if you want to be successful, your audience is global. The app may succeed or it may fail. I take full responsibility if it fails. If it succeeds, there's a whole team that should be responsible. I don't know. No one knows at this stage. It's something I believe in deeply. But what it won't be is an American failure. It'll be a global failure if it fails, or a global success if it wins. By the way, if any of you want to try the app, and a word of warning, it's going to be in the release version about 5 days from now, but the beta version is at this URL. It's in Arabic right now, so if your phone is in Arabic, it will be in Arabic. If your phone is in English, it'll be in English. You can type Arabic in the English version. And we will wipe all the data from the servers about 5 days from now, and you'll have to start again. But if you want to play with it, you can play with it from that URL. In this slide, there's two people you can go and read who know a lot more than me. One is at Business Insider, Henry Blodgett, and the other is at Kleiner Perkins, Mary Meeker. Most of the stats in this deck came from much bigger decks that they have that look at the metrics of what's going on in the world today. And that is me. Thank you very much.